Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Sennheiser 660Ss and the 58X Jubilees. So here's what the outer of the cardboard box for the 660Ss are. Inside that cardboard box you do get a hard case with foam inside where the headphones will be. Comes with a user manual, a 4.4 millimeter TRRS balance cable. Not many amps actually use this connector, so you probably never use this 10-foot to 12-foot cable. It also comes with a second cable that's about 10 or 12 feet long. As you can see, it can get really janky, as you can see, and it ends in a 1/4 inch. And they include this 1/4 inch to 3.5 adapter. And I do not like this adapter because this is very heavy, so it could start to pull out the connector from your amp and you lose audio signal on one of the channels. So I do not like this adapter because it's very heavy. Here's the box for the 58X Jubilees from Massdrop. And then the headphone will be in this plastic bag. You get a user manual. And it just sits in this cardboard cutout piece. So very cheap packaging. And I like this adapter much better, 3.5 to 1/4 inch. This works much better, in my opinion. And that's all that comes with the 58X, other than the stock cable, which I'll show you that now, which is right here. It's a lot shorter cable, which I prefer, which is about 6 feet long. It can still kind of get a little janky. So it just ends in this 3.5, and then you can just use that tiny adapter. Now before we move on, I do want to talk about this balance cable you can buy off of eBay that comes from China. I do not like it because, as you can see, it likes to curl up in these circles. I wouldn't necessarily say that this cable is janky, but it does like to curl up in these circles, so it gets tangled. And I really don't like that. It's a very stiff cable, and I think it is made pretty well though. But the major problem is that the stock cable has no cable noise on the base, but there is a little bit of cable noise here. Well, this cable is really bad in terms of cable noise. So if you rub your fingers against here, or it likes to tangle up and it touches itself like that, it makes a lot of cable noise. So I don't like this cable. So I don't recommend it. And then here's a periap cable, which once you straighten it out, it flows very nicely. So it never gets janky, never goes into circles once you straighten it out. So it's a very good cable, this periap cable. It is handmade. And one of the major critiques I can say about the cable though is, the minus and the plus face outside, is that it doesn't really plug in very nicely into these Sennheiser headphones. It's my only critique about it. And I will say that it also does have cable noise on these two ends, and it is a little worse than the stock cable, but not as bad as that Chinese cable. So let's go ahead and get into the build of the two headphones. So you can see all of this is made out of plastic. The top here is glossy, shiny plastic, while the bottom here is matte black. Well, this gray grill I believe is metal. And then the 660Ss are very similar, just no gloss on the top here, but still made of plastic. And this black grill I believe is metal, and you can see there's an emblem there. So let's go ahead and get into well, before we get into the comfort, I do want to say that these were used. I bought these used, so I did go on Sennheiser to make sure that they're authentic. But since they're used, I do want to mention that this swivel mechanism is very creaky. So I don't really like the build quality on these. I have heard that these Sennheiser headphones last a very long time, but that creakiness is not something I really like. And these I got brand new off of Massdrop, and they're starting to creak just a little bit. So you might have to put some like WD-40 or furniture polish cleaner or something in there to make it less creaky. So let's go ahead and move into comfort. Now, out of the box, the 58X have quite a lot of clamp, but over time, like 1 or 2 months, they have loosened up just enough to where they still have a tight clamp, but they're very comfortable. So I could wear this for a very long time. But I will say that the pads are not very deep inside of here, which has a foam piece, and it does touch my ear. And this material on the pads is less breathable than the 660S and stiffer. So my ears start to get hot over time. This is much softer, more breathable, and a little more smoother feeling. But I would still say that the comfort is basically about equal, and they both can still kind of get hot. I find I get a little more hot on the 58Xs. And then the top here is also smoother, more breathable, and softer than the 58X, which is stiffer than the 660Ss. And like I said, the clamp is tight enough to where the top of the headband could never even touch the top of your head really. But if you do move this down about 2 or 3 hours, you do get a lot of pressure on the top of your head. But I would say the comfort on these are very good once the clamp has loosened up. So let's go ahead and get into audio quality now. Now, I do not have 6XXs to compare side by side, but I will be going off of memory. And I will be comparing these 58X to the 660Ss as well. So let's talk about sub bass. The 58Xs have the most sub bass of the three, while the 660Ss are about similar in sub bass than the 6XXs. So these have more oomph, more boom, and more rumble in the sub bass regions. So this one's the best of the three in terms of that. Now we also got mid bass, and I will say that the 6XXs have the most mid bass. So they sound the warmest of the three. And that's one of the reasons why I do like those headphones, because they kind of have a nice full body bass feeling to them. And they sound smoother compared to the 58X or the 660Ss. And I would say, actually, the 660Ss do have less mid bass than the 6XXs. The mid bass is actually equal to the 58Xs. So so the 6XXs have the most mid bass. So out of the three, which one do I like the bass the best on? I'd probably take the 58Xs because that's the most sub bass of the three. So let's move on to the vocals. Now, the 6XXs are known to have forward vocals, and at times I find the vocals on those to be shouty. And then I would say the 58X and the 660Ss are about equal in terms of how forward the vocals are, but they're a little less recessed compared to the 6XXs. They're still forward though, but they never sound shouty. So I like the vocals on the 58X and the 660Ss better. Now I will say the 660Ss have more clarity and even more natural sounding vocals than the 58Xs. But the 58Xs still have more clarity and more natural sounding vocals than the 6XXs. And the 6Xs, again, can sound shouty, which I don't necessarily like. So let's go ahead and move on to the highs. Now the 6XXs, not only are those considered more warm, but they can also be considered dark sounding a little bit. So the highs can kind of be a little bit, some people call it veiled or recessed. I'll just call them dark sounding. That's like the best way to describe it, but they still have good detail and resolution. While the 58X is much closer to neutral, and so you get a little bit better detail and resolution. And I never considered that the highs on the 58X or the 660Ss to never be fatiguing or sibilant. So they got really good highs. Now I will say the 660Ss have a little bit better clarity and detail in the highs. So a little bit more better treble performance of the three. So let's get into soundstage. 6XXs are very narrow, so not great for gaming. 58Xs are a little wider, but still very narrow, while 660Ss are much wider. So they're pretty good for gaming in terms of soundstage. And talking about the soundstage, that's one of the reasons why the 660Ss sound better than the 58X Jubilees. They have about, I would say about 15% better clarity than these 58Xs, because these 58Xs sound a little muffled compared to the 660Ss. And the 660Ss have that bigger soundstage, so they sound a little more airy and a little more natural sounding, and with that better clarity and detail, and a little more better treble performance. So the 660Ss do sound better than the 58X Jubilees, but not by a whole lot. I would say these Jubilees are about 80 to 90% as good as the 660Ss, and the sound signature is about 80 to 90% similar as well, to be honest. While the 6XXs, those have a different sound signature, so they're not exactly similar. Now let's go to the imaging. I would say the 6XXs, they have okay imaging, not the best. While the 58Xs, since they're just a little more soundstage, I do get a little bit better, just a tiny bit better instrument separation and imaging. But I will say that the 660Ss are about 5 to 10% better than the 58X in terms of imaging. They're just a little bit better there. And combined with the imaging and the soundstage, when I'm listening to music, the 660Ss just have a more live sound to it. More natural and live. So it's intimate, but spacious at the same time. And thus, I think the 660Ss sound the best out of all three of the headphones, mainly because of that and the clarity. So I do want to mention another thing is that the 660Ss are like $500 though. And I do not recommend them for $500, not even for $400 or even for $300. The most I would probably pay is $250, which is maybe $100 more than these 58Xs. And you're only getting about like 15% more clarity and quite a bit more soundstage, maybe 5% better imaging. But you get a little more of that soundstage, so it makes music sound a little bit better, and it's also better for gaming. So the most I would probably want to pay for like 660Ss is maybe $100 more than these, because these are about 80 to 90% as good as those. Now, another thing I want to mention is that you can go on a website called Hi-Fi Heaven, I believe that's what it's called, and they describe of how you can mod these 58X Jubilees. So you just take your fingernail here, where this cup part is, and you push up until it comes off, like that. And then you take this out, and then you can remove that foam. Now, on that website, they describe of different materials that they could put over the driver to make it sound a little different. I didn't do that, but what I did do is take out this foam to see if there was any difference. Now, you will have an exposed driver if you take this foam out, so I do recommend you put something else here. But if you do take, and before I talk about that, you just snap this back in like that. And then you move that down, and then these pegs do come out, so you just want to push those in. And when I take that foam out, you get about maybe 5, maybe at the most 10% better clarity. So a little less muffled sounding compared to the 660Ss. Now these still sound very clear versus other headphones, but just compared to the 660Ss with that foam in there, you get a little more muffledness. When you take that foam out, you get more airiness. It doesn't really increase the soundstage. It's maybe 5% better, but the 660Ss are still like 25% better soundstage though. But by taking that foam out, you get a little more airiness. And with that, you get like a 5 to 10% better clarity as well. So I do like how these sound with the foams taken out. And if you mod them, you can maybe make them sound just like 600s or 660Ss with better sub bass, basically. So out of the three headphones, I'd probably recommend the 58X Jubilees for $150 off mass drop if you're in the US. Now, would I still recommend the 6XXs? I probably would still recommend them. They have a nice warm and dark sound and very smooth. And for $200, I could still recommend those. While 660Ss, I can only recommend them if you get them for about $250. And I believe that's basically everything I really wanted to talk about these. I do want to mention that I probably will have a comparison versus the mono prices in a separate video. I probably do the mono price review, but I'm probably going to compare the M1060s and the M1060Cs. And then I'm probably going to compare two Fostech headphones, and then I'll probably do a comparison video. And in my opinion, for $150, these are still one of the best headphones that you can buy for under $200. I do think maybe like M1060Cs, once you mod them open, they're probably better than these, but they're going to cost twice as much. And so I still think that these are a very good deal for $150. And once you mod them, you can make them probably sound even better. So that's about all I want to say. So thank you for watching.